Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks, the weekly short-form podcast where we skip the intro and jump right into it. This week I'm joined by my colleagues
Morgan
and
Thomas.
Thomas, you're making a video podcast debut this week.
I am. Yeah, there's something with the planning that I always miss it, but here I am.
Yeah, we're filming this on a Monday, usually film on a Wednesday, so it's good to have you on the podcast finally. Or again, I mean, you've been on the audio a couple times, but...
it's since the video is in that I've somehow been kept behind the screens. I don't know, it must be something about my appearance that's not really...
but it wasn't supposed to be told like that, but
exactly, but
Sorry.
I
can take a hint,
for sure. But the good thing is, so this week, while we have you here, we're actually going to take advantage of that and speak about creating a watch brand in 2023.
Yeah.
And get your take on it, go into the experience that you've made thus far. Obviously, we're going to be discussing your brand VPC, Venustus per Constantiam. So we're going to be talking about that a little bit, getting your take on it. But before we do that, of course, let's see what's on the wrist. Let's start with you, Morgan. What have you got on the wrist today?
Okay, so today I have my Omega Speedmaster Professional reference. I can't remember it
it's the long
anytime
one.
soon. That's that reference. So it's not the current one. It's the one that just left the catalog just before the new one comes in. So it's like a long reference number that you can't tell. But I really like it.
Very nice. And it's on the... What
so
bracelet is that?
It's an Uncle Seiko bracelet that
shout out to
mimics
the uncle.
Yeah, exactly. That mimics the new one, actually.
Yeah.
You know, the current one, which is way better, of course. But this one is not a bad option, too. I like it.
It's cool. It's got that pinstripe clasp as well. It's
really nice. Really nice.
Very nice. Cool. So, Thomas, what's on your wrist today?
I am wearing my Panerai Radiomir, the PEM 210.
210.
Yeah.
Nice.
On a nice custom-made leather strap.
Yeah, there's a story to that strap, right? That was went on Fratello that was using some leather inspired by a pair of boots that you have, right?
Yeah, we color matched it to my Red Wing boots, so that was a bit of a
very nice.
You're such a looker.
It's a bit in vain, but anyway, it's fun.
Extra,
It's fun.
but it works well.
Extra, yeah.
That's cool. That's
but
cool.
I really like it. Yeah,
it wears super well, even regardless of the size of it. I think it's 45, right?
Yeah, but it
doesn't wear.
It isn't that big.
No,
somehow.
it's not that big.
Just,
I was looking at it from that angle. It's really cool.
Yeah,
really nice.
It's that Panerai proportion magic where it just really works.
Nice. Exactly. How about yourself?
I'm wearing my Omega Seamaster reference 2254 yet again. It's very real, right? Because it's just the watch that I keep wearing, and
that's your watch.
Nothing wrong with that, right? It's
cool.
I just sometimes you find something you like, and no one can tell you to do it to wear something else. So I just keep wearing it as long as I love it.
Yeah, that's nice.
The rest of your watches are gathering dust at home.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're being slowly auctioned off. No, not really. No, but it's
nice.
I try to mix it up, but at the moment I'm going through a phase of just going with this one. So yeah, enjoying it while it lasts. Perfect. So let's get into the topic today. My first question for you, Thomas, we're going to be asking you mostly questions, and Morgan, you're here because you're also working a little bit on the project, but we'll get to that in a little bit. So my first question is, when was the moment, or what was the thing that made you want to start your own brand?
It's been a dream for years, to be honest. It's been something that's been lingering in my mind, and but there was never like a super concrete idea what the watch should be, like something specific. So the idea was always a bit too derivative, or I didn't feel like this absolutely needs to exist, so I postponed it. And then, unfortunately, my fiance got very sick. Which kind of put everything on hold. And then when we finally had like the sign, like, she's going to be okay, it's going to be fine. Then I said, you know what, it's no sense in postponing dreams, and just have to go for it. And by then as well, I had sort of like all these thousands of watches, like first vintage watches when I was a dealer, and now modern watches when I'm at Fratello. With every one I handled, I was like, it sort of provided a little bit of some ingredients of what my potential dream watch would be.
Right.
But there wasn't anything that ticked all the boxes for me. And then I thought, well, maybe that is the watch I should make. And that's basically what I did.
Perfect. Yeah, I think it's
what I'm doing, I have to say.
yeah. You're definitely still in the
I'm
process.
definitely still in there.
It's an exciting thing, I have to say, having followed along from the beginning, just to go from some ideas and some very loose sketches done by the designer Max. And then like seeing it really take shape. And we keep sort of looking down here for those watching the video. We keep looking at the table because we have a resin sort of 3D printed prototype, right, of the watch itself. But before we get to that, I'm getting a little bit ahead of it. So tell me also a little bit about the name and why you went with VPC, or it's a Latin Venustas per Constantium.
It means Venustas per Constantium means beauty or charm through restraint, and that was sort of the core philosophy behind the brand. So I wanted it to be subtle. I wanted it to be what they call slow release charm, or like you're wearing it and someone from across the room doesn't go like, oh, you're wearing an expensive watch. But you yourself, with every week, with every month you wear it, it should grow on you a little bit more.
You discover a new feature every now and then. Oh, I didn't know that little flank was polished. Oh, that and this,
That's the type of beauty or charm I wanted to make. And so I thought, you know what, let's just put that as a creed in the name. And then, VPC to me, I mean, not everybody likes it, but to me it's just a clean, nice, simple acronym.
Yeah.
And then the only place where you'll ever see the full name, because granted, it isn't something you use easily. It's only ever on the dial, written in full at 12, which is a bit of a nod to history, when back in the day, watchmakers just used to sign their name in one or two lines, sometimes curved, sometimes straight, before the days of logos and stuff. And so that gives it a very classic look. So that's the only place where you'll ever see the full name. And otherwise, it's just VPC with the monogram logo.
But I do really like the fact that we are able to see the process from behind. All the
pain. And
all the pain and all the good surprises and everything. And I think it's completely different. So maybe we are like, I'm really happy to see the results. And every time Thomas is coming with a new prototype or new something, everybody at the office is like, can I have it on the wrist and blah, blah, blah.
For sure.
I really do like the fact that Thomas is doing everything like properly, just up to the font that is going to use. It's customized. I mean,
we'll get into the little details.
I think that's crazy. I like that a lot.
I think that the approach is fantastic, and I think, like you say, it's this thing of having been able to follow along and to be sort of tapped into the process. I think for those of you listening who don't know, there's been the Building a Watch Brand series published on Fratello. I think we're up to, what is it, number would be
10 or 11.
10 or 11, yeah. So Thomas has been sort of also chronicling your progress creating the brand. So those are there. We can link them in the show notes for people to read through. But it's definitely been interesting, and I don't know if the audience agrees or not, but you sort of get really invested having that sort of input and insight and transparency. Has that also been important to you to provide that aspect?
Well, it wasn't the original plan. I mean, originally, I honestly, when I thought I'm going to do this, I approached Robert Jan, owner of Fratello, and I asked I want to do this. Is it okay for you? Is there any sort of, I don't think there'll be conflicts of interest. How can we, do you want me to keep it on the side or and he just said, you know what, why don't you write about it? Why don't you share it with the audience, how it goes?
Yeah.
And so then obviously I had to embrace that, because it's a big audience for me and it boosts my chances of success.
Yeah.
But it also became instantly sort of a strategic change, because it meant that I was sharing everything as I went, including the hardships and also the revisions. So sometimes I've shared something like, it's going to be like this. And then it turned out impossible, or it turned out that I had to sort of, but if I do that, then I can't do that. And I had to come back to that.
Yeah.
But I think people like that. People like that because then they see the full process and the cons that are coming in the process and the full transparency of it. I think people are really into that today. It's like in the food, let's say in the middle, like in the food thingy, you want to know where everything that you eat comes from. And I think you're kind of doing the same with the watch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for sure. I mean, it's. I'm sure that it's a more enjoyable thing for the audience and the readers than it is for you, because I'm sure for you it's also. I mean, what has been the biggest challenge? Let's say from sharing and getting that sort of immediate, unfiltered feedback from people, and then also what has been your biggest challenge, sort of in these first stages of creating the brand and producing the brand?
Well, regarding the sharing as we go, I mean, at first I was also very much sort of looking forward, like I might do this, I might do that, which naturally invites a whole lot of, oh, you should do this, you should do that.
Right.
As people respond, which is a very natural and understandable thing.
Sure.
But then I really had to sort of think to myself, like, hold on, I'm building my own vision of a dream watch. And if I start sort of compromising on that and start taking in all sorts of input and start thinking like, hey, maybe people will like this, maybe people will like that, then it becomes watered down. And that's really not what I want. So it took a little while for me to sort of say, okay, you know what, I'm going to share this and I'm going to invite feedback and I'm going to interact with it, but I'm not going to let it influence my decision making. So that was a bit of a challenge. It took a bit of getting used to, but it's, on the other hand, it's super enjoyable because people care enough to actually give their opinion, and that's in some ways very humbling as well, which is really cool. And then from like, in general, the biggest challenge for me has been to sort of to get things done, to be honest. It's really weird, but the Swiss watch industry is quite a closed system. And if I come calling and I call some case maker or a movement maker and I say, hey, I'm Thomas and I'm this Dutch guy and I want to make a really small series of a pretty complicated watch. But we can stamp out 10,000 watches that are very easy for this big name brand. And sorry, man, we don't have the time. And most don't even take the time to tell you that. You just have to,
for sure.
So trying to get like the manufacturers to work with me to say, you know what, we believe in this project and it might be small at first, but maybe it'll grow. We'll engage with you. We'll do the quality that you ask. And, that has been kind of the biggest challenge so far.
Okay.
But I'm happy to share that now everything is lined up. I mean, just to give a bit of an image, we're at the stage where this is the final sort of 3D printed prototype. There have been some tweaks to this, and now the green light has been given for sample production. So now there's 3 months where they'll make my first completely functioning watches, and now there's nothing I can do at this moment. So it's that's basically where we are now. So
okay. And so again, thinking about the process and things along the way that you've had to sort of discover, whether the easy or the hard way, what has been one of the biggest surprises for you along that process? Like perhaps something that's been surprisingly easy, something that's been surprisingly difficult we covered, but something that you've kind of found yourself going, oh, I didn't think this worked this way, or anything come to mind?
There's been a million things.
Yeah, I know, of course.
I'm sort of searching for it. Well, there's one thing that's been a bit of an eye opener. Like when I started, and I said, like I'm making this sort of do-it-all style watch, which in my mind should come on a bracelet. I mean, you can wear it on whatever strap you want, but I think a bracelet should be part of it, and it should come with a bracelet that's fully designed for the watch. And sort of from day one, some people who knew what they were talking about were saying, "Dude, are you sure? You're taking a lot of trouble on," and that has proven to be true. If I had made just a watch head with a generic leather strap, my stress levels would have been much lower.
But I think it's what also...
So a custom bracelet, it's been a real eye-opener. So few brands do it. Even when you think so, it's usually just a generic bracelet. But some sort of end link and that's it. And
I think it's good because it takes you apart from the rest of the micro brand and small brands and everything. So we know that if we buy a VPC watch, everything will be completely customized, from the phone to the bracelet, which is really important in my opinion. So this is not a normal generic frilling bracelet, like kind of oyster style bracelet. No, this is the VPC bracelet. And I think it's something really different, and I think it's something really strong from that brand that I really appreciate too.
I think
glad
give
to hear
the
it.
effort,
I hope I'm not the only one.
it's not just the
I
sort
don't
of
think so.
the thinking that you have going into the project. I think it's then really being able to surmount those challenges and then sort of plant your flag at the top of it and say, okay, we did it. Now on to the next thing. What would you say are like a handful of details that you're especially sort of proud of, like little things that really maybe perhaps other brands do or don't do? Perhaps most of them don't do, but little things that you've put in there that you were really that you're really proud of now looking back.
I think one of the big ones was I worked with designer Max Resnick, who's a really great designer from England. And one of the challenges I set him was that a pet peeve of mine is bad end links, where they look like they're supposed to look like 3 links, but they're just one sort of coarsely milled.
I get what you mean.
So I briefed him very early on, like, whatever we do, the way the bracelet and the case integrate, and it's not an integrated bracelet model, but the way they sort of connect has to look really perfect. It has to look as if the bracelet just runs through the case, or some way that it doesn't have such an eyesore of an end link. Basically.
It can't feel like an afterthought.
Exactly. And so what we ended up with, it's a concept that came from Max. I have to credit where credit's due. But he made this ledge that's sort of like an old hooded lug, but then a little bit less.
Yeah.
And it's uniquely curved on the inside, and it serves as a sort of a ledge where the bracelet can tuck underneath.
Right.
So the bracelet doesn't have to open up all the way to fill the full side of the case, but it just sort of ducks under this ledge. And then we make an end link that's actually made of separate parts. So the center link of the end link is a separate link. So you don't get that weird milled look.
Yeah.
And it runs under that ledge. So it looks as if the bracelet just runs straight through the watch continuously.
Yeah.
And that's something that the way it ended up, now you can see it pretty good on this sample.
Yeah.
That's worked out exactly as I hoped. I mean, honestly, better than I hoped. But that's something I'm really proud of, because very few brands
For sure,
do that.
for sure.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And then another detail that Morgan was alluding to before, the font, right? I think I remember that was one of the things that I remember you coming in like week after week, and you were just like, yeah, the font's got to be right. The font's got to be right.
Yeah.
And that was like really interesting also to learn, alongside you and through you, like about more and more about fonts and serifs and the way that it used to be done.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned, old fonts were done in a very specific way, which caused them to have, tell us a little bit about the font that you selected or created for
the letter. It's so basically what I love about vintage watches, one of many things, is the typography on the dials, because it used to be handwork. It was just a draftsman who drew the dial literally. And they would optimize these fonts for the old printing techniques and legibility and sort of ink behavior at very small scale, which is why they space out openings, for instance, as much as possible. So that's why you get the flat-topped A, for instance, or the flat-topped 4, so that the hole in the middle is as big as possible, so it doesn't fill up when the ink sort of pulls up. The same with the tiny pointy serifs you see on these fonts. It's just to prevent the ink from pulling in too much, just to keep the shape of the letter sharp.
Everything
It's a really
is well
technical
thought
thing.
after. That's crazy. Yeah.
But as printing techniques improved, that was no longer sort of needed. But rather than use the new possibilities to do something even nicer, most brands just went to Arial and very generic fonts. And so I felt like I really want, as a little nod to history, to use a typeface with those quirks. The hooked 7, the hooked J, the flat-topped A, the flat-topped 4, all those sort of weird characters with the pointy serifs. And eventually I found something that was sort of close, but
not quite there. Yeah.
And then I met Samuel Baker, who was a typography designer from England. And he was just branching out to start his own business. And he wanted to start specializing in watch typography.
Okay.
And
very
how
specific.
How good is that?
Wow.
And so he could tell me even more than I was already sort of obsessing over. He could fill in all the little details. And he said, you know what? We said, you know what? Let's make it entirely custom typeface for VPC. And so we did. So it features a lot of those vintage quirks, but it's also half modern because it's designed using modern techniques, and he's taken some liberties as well to make it. it's not a copy of an old font, but it feels very much like an old font.
Right.
That's really nice.
And and we've modernized the quirks as well. There's now a flat-topped @ symbol in there as well. So if I write my email address, then that's flat-topped as well, which was a fun little joke. But so the but there is very little typography on the dial. There's only the name and Swiss made, and then on the case spec there's a few specs. So it's not that much, but then it's completely made from the ground up. So we did put a lot of attention into it. And I think you can see it when you look at old renders, when we still had a sort of more generic font. It's good.
It looks
but
better
it's
now.
not as... It has that little something extra now.
But that's why I was saying that you put the effort. I mean, you've decided in the first place to use a different movement, but you could not supply it. So, I mean, you can't build it yourself anyway. So you had to make a decision and use something different. But every time, even if it took you efforts and more time and everything, you chose to do it and to go full in and let's make a custom font. Okay, done.
No
bracelet
shortcuts.
is a problem. Boom, let's make still our own bracelet.
Yeah.
And I think this is where it takes you apart from the other brand. Again, it's like every time you could, even if it was a struggle, even if it was difficult, you still chose to do it because in your head, the clear idea was, I want to make no concessions or at least the least possible. And when you said the least possible is, I mean, it's a supply problem. If you can't supply a movement, you can't make the watch run. So you have to take another decision. But for the rest, even if it took you more time, it feels like, and I know because we are here, I know that you took a lot of effort. It took you a lot of effort, and you still made it like that. And I think it's really cool.
For sure, that's the two key things, right? Like no shortcuts taken. At least that's really what we've seen. And then also, you also spoke about it before. This idea of you experience a lot of watches. You've been in the world of watches for a while. You've seen what works. You've seen what doesn't. You've seen top brands. You've seen small, micro, independent brands, and you sort of can really pinpoint the things you really love about it. Of course, it's not a watch made for everyone because it's ultimately very subjective. But I think that it is really culminates all these factors coming together, culminate in a product that is very interesting, very well rounded, and that works really, really well. It's almost like the enthusiasts the ultimate enthusiast watch in some way. That it's really all the features you want, all the specs you want. For the most part, I mean, there's always people out there, it's going to tick all the boxes basically.
Yeah, but that's also a luxury you have if you have. I mean, we're working among enthusiasts.
Yeah.
Our entire network is enthusiasts
For sure.
and I'm working at a very small scale, so I can afford to just focus on enthusiasts and make the ultimate enthusiast watch. And if a broader public looks at it and it's like, well, I don't really see it.
That's
fine.
Yeah, but that's fine. Yeah,
that's fine.
Of course.
I mean, we're going to do a first run of 300 pieces, so that's nothing on a global scale. It's just 300 enthusiasts, and that's it.
So one final question before we wrap up. You will debut the model is the H37
Type 37
Type
HW.
37 HW, and you will debut it in 3 colors. And one is a silver, sort of silver dial.
Yep.
The other one is a green, and the other one is blue. I was thinking about this the other day. It's quite bold to not have a black dial as one of your debut models. What was the thinking there? Is it just
it was
putting
honestly
you on the spot here?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's a fair question. We've tested black.
Okay.
And it was honestly a matter of sort of capacity. Like it's quite complicated when you're doing something like this. You've got minimum order quantities, not just for the entire project, but for parts as well, such as dials.
Right.
And so it made sense for me to limit myself to 3. And the way we spend a lot of time on colors. I mean, we haven't gone into it here, but you guys know as well. Like I've been obsessing over colors up until very recently, actually. And the silver, green, and blue were just prettier than the black we had. And so at some point I was like, you know what?
Yeah, I don't miss the black.
Black might be popular.
Yeah.
But
it's very sort of representative of the brand, right? It's like that's the safe option. It's the obvious option.
Yeah.
It could work, but you go with what looks truly good to your eye.
And then I think also if it's a success, this is something that could.
Of course, it's always on the table.
Yeah, that's something that could came up after.
For sure.
I've had very few questions about it though.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I get questions all the time about pretty much any decision I make, but
not
honestly,
the dial color.
I've very rarely. I think this is the second time that I've heard a question about a black dial. So apparently, people are sort of fine.
I
with,
don't miss it. I mean, if you want the most versatile one, let's say, you go for the silver one.
Yeah, definitely.
And the silver one works as good as the black one.
What's your favorite? I'm putting you on the spot now.
Man,
I can tell you what mine is.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a couple of them, I think.
What's your role in this project? How are you involved in the VPC making it happen?
So 2 questions. So the first one, I think my favorite one might be the silver still.
Okay, the silver. Interesting.
And then really close the green. But I do like light dial.
Yeah.
So the silver for me is like a must-have. So yeah. And my role has been to take picture of the prototypes so far, as they came up to the office. Mm-hmm. And the next step will be to make the campaign actually when the final product will be here. So
very
really,
cool. We're planning really cool photo shoots.
Yeah. We are like looking at what about doing this and what about going there and let's see now
it's
how
similar
it works
to the project with the watch. It's very much like going into the details.
Exactly.
Such a playground. Yeah. It's so much fun.
Fantastic. So to wrap things up, what is my favorite's the green.
Yeah,
I was gonna say my favorite's the green. Easy for me. It's an easy choice. Although the silver for me takes a close second, and the blue is. I'd like to see the blue in person because blue is a color that in my mind is it's blue. It's blue. This is blue. This is blue.
It's gonna be very close to black though. That's interesting. It's gonna be very very dark blue. So that's.
So let's see. I might get the free.
It's exciting to see it. It's exciting to see it. So you're definitely sold. But tell us what stage are you at currently? So December 2023. What stage are you at currently? What are the next steps, and what are the next few points along the timeline? Just to
so I've just given the green light on sample production. So that will be like fully to spec working prototypes.
Bracelets,
except
everything.
By the way, for the calibers. The calibers will not be decorated and will not be chronometer standard for the samples, but they will be for the actual product. But and that will take from now roughly 3 months.
Okay.
So it's sometime early March, I hope. And then I have to make sure that everyone knows about it because it's a bit of a make or break moment. And I start the pre-sale window a couple of weeks later.
Okay.
Then people can purchase one that will be produced later in next year. So I'm gonna have to generate some attention and make sure some people get hands on with the watch. Maybe get us some YouTube reviews and stuff like that. And cool. Yeah, we'll see it from there. So 3 months from now, we'll finally see some actual steel and
fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very, very exciting. So we'll obviously keep the audience posted. Where can they follow along? Instagram, the website?
Instagram, VPC_watches. Website, vpcwatch.com. And I tend to share everything first with my newsletter subscribers. So if people subscribe on the website, then that's the first place where I share stuff. And that's where I'll announce the pre-sale as well. So, and of course, the Building a Watch Brand articles on Fratello.
Yeah, the only way for you guys to have information before is to work for Fratello, which is not that easy.
No, that's a little bit more difficult. We get some sneak previews, but perfect. So thanks so much for taking the time and for telling us a little bit more about VPC. And I think if anybody listening has any questions, they should head over to the article, leave them in the comments, and I'm sure Thomas, you'll circle back to the comments and try to answer some of the questions.
I will.
And thanks again. And of course, as always, make sure to like, subscribe, follow along, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.